Hey, Oliver, you want tips? We got tips. Everybody in the comments gave you excellent advice. Tony was on point as usual. I think Jeremiah was the guy's name, the like cartoon thing for his icon. His advice is usually spot on. And there was someone else, Jamie. Jamie's advice is always spot on too. So everything those guys said is absolutely correct. I will double down on all that stuff for you in video form, so hopefully even more digestible. Your throw's looking pretty good. First order of business, you were using the Brody Smith technique, which is a very advanced, high level move. You can see it right there. This is the Brody Smith technique. He does it literally every drive. His tongue is out of his mouth. So that's adding at least 50 feet. Don't change that. That part's perfect. But as far as things we can actually change, you got kind of a lot of speed going into your run up. Maybe play with doing that a little more controlled just while you're figuring out um, all the mechanics and stuff. But the first thing that I see that the first gentleman who posted also pointed out, just your intent, right? There's no reason to look this way. So keep you started with your eyes on target, obviously, but where do you lose it early, way early. So keep your eyes, like keep your intent on your target as long as you can. And then I think he said, or someone said, let your shoulder reaching back push your chin out of the way. So the only time you stop looking at the target is when your shoulder makes you stop looking at the target. So that's just like an intent thing. You are trying to murder your target with your eyes the whole throw. That'll help like key your body in that you need to send energy that way to your right. So that's the first thing. Keep your eyes on target. Then the next thing, just kind of starting on the bottom. I'm going to look at your brace foot toes. So it looks like this heel does come down to flat. Make sure you're not doing that. So stay up on the ball of the foot. It makes the leg more athletic and it makes it possible for you to have your knee dip in. So your knee stays out. Yeah, so you're rocking up onto your heel and then this leg is dead. It's just a post, right? But if you stay up on the ball of your foot, then your heel can float and your knee can dip in a little bit. And it's a lot easier for your leg to do the motions it needs to do in the follow through when your knee is tipped in like this. So your hip is going to have to do extra work to pull this leg up out of the ground and get it into the shape that it needs to be to hopefully rotate that way a little bit, which you do a little bit. You could use more of that. That'll come from moving this brace foot to more of an offset position, like Jamie said. Yeah, so coming onto your heel here and leaving this leg locked out behind you is slowing down your hips. So stay up on the ball of this foot, tip the knee in, we'll fix that. Your brace toes are open. We need them to be closed. When they open, it opens this hip, and the hip needs to stay closed because that's kind of the hinge point of the whole rotation of the hip, is that hip is closed and the leg is stout there on your brace. So your hips need to stay here in this location. Specifically, this one will stay absolutely dead there, and this one will rotate around. That's what powers the throw. But because you braced open, your front knee bends too much. And I mean, like maybe your brace is okay, but your shoulder is super out of position. Like your head is over your brace foot, your shoulder is over your brace foot. So even if we back up, like by there, it's very easy to tell that you are leading with the shoulder way too much. So what we want instead is we want our spine to stay vertical. So all your shoulders are doing is staying on top of the hips, maybe adding a little bit of power with a spine twist, but not a whole lot. This much activity in your shoulder going that way is not good. You want an upright spine rotating on top of your hips, and you want the shoulder to just stay out of the way. Like you want to keep your pec muscle really active, you want to keep your lat muscle in the back really active, and you want to keep that shoulder, like imagine taking your shoulder socket and sucking it down towards your core. Like you want your elbow to be, or your shoulder to be as far in as possible. Then you kind of break that rule and extend your shoulder socket out towards the camera to make more space for the disc to come into your power pocket. But that's a little more of an advanced thing. I wouldn't worry about that yet. But try to keep that shoulder from shrugging forward like it is. Check my notes for a second. Your reach back needs some tune up too. So your brace toes are open. That's the big thing here. And you've planted in line with your target. You really want, if your rear foot is on this track, then your brace foot really needs to end up on this other track here. So this is your X step. Your initial step will be like right here, closer to your X step than you probably want to make it. Keeping those short is good. It keeps your hips more neutral. And then your front foot really needs to be over here. That way your trailing leg will go behind you more. This going behind you is very important because it limits your hip rotation and your shoulder rotation, which you don't do enough of. Like you get your leg starts going behind you, but it doesn't go enough. Right, it stays right there. So at your release point, so your power pocket is like okay, it could be tighter, but at your release, which is right about there, it doesn't look too bad, but ideally we would see a little tiny bit more of your chest here. So the big problem is that your shoulders have slipped forward past your hips. So the biggest issue is that I want to see your spine way closer to upright here. Like a little bit of 10-15 degrees tilt is okay, but aim for straight. You don't want any force going that way. Your core should be tight, keeping you right on top of those hips. Your chest should be a tiny bit more open to the camera, so like more like that angle. Your offhand looks good in this still. We'll take a look at what it does later, but then I want your hand, it looks like there's still a little bit of bend in your elbow here, but just your shoulders are probably rotating too far open because this foot isn't going far enough that way. And it's kind of choose your own adventure. Like what you're doing is totally fine, but if you want more distance, like significantly more distance, you've got to get a more powerful motion going on. And a lot of that power comes from the rotation in your hips and shoulders by this point in the throw having slowed down more earlier, so that these two blocks kind of stop, or at least start stopping, and then they put even more acceleration on the arm because the arm is whipping out in front more. So because you're kind of leading with your shoulder this late in the game, you're kind of just pulling your arm around instead of all of your body mass having rotated really fast here on this axis, stopped, and your arm whipping out in front. That's kind of a subtle thing that may not make sense entirely, but either trust me or don't and ask questions. So you're shouldering it, and then your shoulder weight gets too far over your brace here, which is kind of killing your distance because the rotation needs to happen behind the brace. So your shoulders are staying behind the brace relatively, your hips, are staying behind the brace relatively well, like this is decent, but your shoulders have bled way over the front. So we really want to see hips here, strong brace, shoulders up here, and then like that's what people will call lag, right? Where you whip right here, and then, or you spin around in place right here, and then the arm whips out after that. Okay, reach back position. So a couple people said your reach back is not complete, which is totally accurate. So you've already started going forward there. So let's keep it honest. Already going forward there too, it looks like. Okay. So here you're still extending. Let's call that peak reach back. You still have a significant bend in your elbow, right? Um, and I see a shoulder and a shoulder. What I want to see is those shoulders not quite switched, but I want this shoulder. It again, choose your own adventure. You can coil your shoulders back as much as you want, but it's okay to get the cap of your front shoulder here. So we'd see a shoulder blade in this area, and then your other shoulder would be like there. If you rotate your shoulders further there, make sure you get rid of this bend in the elbow while you're doing it. So the disc will come out more here. Make sure it's not getting too behind you. It looks like you're dangerously close to your chest being between the disc and your target. That is bad news. So make sure as you practice reaching back farther, make sure you're reaching out here. So straight arm to the outside of the disc, shoulder here, other shoulder there. And let that front shoulder be what turns your chin back to this position. Don't turn your head back earlier than that. And then shorten up the last stride a little bit, which it'll be helpful to slow down the walk up a little bit to get that to make sense. If you just make the last step smaller without slowing down the walk up, it won't work. You got to slow down the walk up to make the step smaller, and then offset the step like a decent foot and a half. I'm still playing with this in my throw. I still need more offset because I usually don't get my leg to go that way enough. So then I still have my shoulders too open at the release, and I don't get as much power, and I often miss to the right. So if you find yourself often missing to the right, then this is definitely what's happening. But firming up the brace, keeping this foot up on the balls of the feet, and getting that little knee dip in. You also kind of want a knee dip in the front, but that's a little more advanced. But you can try it if you want to. Then a longer reach back, longer elbow in the reach back, more shoulder rotation in the reach back. Definitely keep the tongue out. Style points for that. That's about all I got, dude. It's looking pretty good, and it's gonna look better soon. Nice work. Ask questions if you got them.